make good on what I said I was going to do. I said I was going to, instead of pick and choose and whatever, we're going to just pick something and stick with it. It's in Hebrews 11. That's what I picked with, and so we're going to be back in Hebrews 11 again. The first one was the legacy of faith, and so this is going to be a legacy of faith part 2. Last time, remember I was wearing my blue shirt and my chunky phase, and my daughter had this pair of shoes, and she wore them until there was holes in the toes, and then she just kept wearing. She put a safety pin in the end, and kept wearing them. And so I told Jen, I was like, go get her another pair of shoes, and I was like, and get me a pair too, because something that awesome I want to try out. So there are these Hey Dudes. Have you heard of them? Yeah, Hey Dudes. And so I was like, and she wears them all the time. Rain's trying, doesn't matter. But so far, all I've found is my toes are cold. Because she's like, oh yeah, they're barely, they don't weigh anything because there's nothing to them and your feet get cold. But, Brian took one look at me, he's like, you look like a dork. And I was like, I'm wearing a comfortable shoe. So, I just didn't want you to be like, what, does he think he's a teenager again or something? I just wanted to try it, so I just don't want you to be distracted by the shoes. And I think I'll be back to my boots next week, to be honest. Oh, there we go. All right. Thank you. Yeah. They're sort of comfortable, but they're just pretty cold. The glasses? Well, see, they make me look smart, so, yeah. Well, see, I forgot my glasses this morning when I was going to do Sunday school, and I told Jen, I was like, you better go get me a pair of glasses. I'm not sure I can read. But I have 2 pairs, and she got me the pair that makes me look like a nerd, so. I'm just joking. These things are cool. The first time I showed up to work, and my partners are like, you seriously going to wear those? And I knew right then and there, I'm going to wear them forever. Yep. And my kids don't even act like it embarrasses them for me to walk around with these on, because they think that if they don't say anything, then I'll let it go and maybe get a decent pair of glasses. But I know deep down they're embarrassed, so I'm going to keep wearing them all the time. Plus they're pretty sweet, I really do. I see lots of things very clearly. People are like, how'd you see that? And I was like, it's the nerd shields. That's what the guys at work, they named these the nerd shields. And so, anyway, I digress. Okay, so I reminded all of us of 2 questions that Pastor Nace presented in late 2018 and early 2019 when he preached his Hebrew series. And those 2 questions were, what legacy do you leave behind? And what are we doing with our lives? And as we go through this series on Hebrews 11, I'm going to keep bringing those questions to the forefront, because I think it's something that we should continually ask ourselves. I don't think we should ask ourselves once and then just live life without that in our mind. I think we should regularly evaluate, what legacy do we want to leave behind, and are we living in a way that's accomplishing that? And, more specifically, what are we doing with our lives, and is it what God would be having us do? And if not, then we can make those corrections as appropriate. So we're going to open up to Hebrews chapter 11. I'm always scared I can't find things, so I put these sticky notes in there. It's just a thing. I know the books of the Bible pretty well, but I get panicked. So if you're wondering what all that's going on, that's what it is. All right, Hebrews chapter 11, verses 5 and 6. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life, so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. I'm going to throw in verse 7 here. I was going to come back to it, but I changed my mind. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. So Enoch and Noah are the two people that we're going to be discussing and maybe drawing some principles out of their life that I see and I think could be helpful to us that we could apply in our own lives. I think it's interesting, like when you read that, and you guys are probably like, well, no kidding, but you just say by faith Enoch, and then it doesn't say, and then his great-grandson Noah, right? Then it just says Noah. But those two, Enoch and Noah, are family, and they're not even really distant family, they're few generations apart. So it's kind of cool. Like if you think about, like where you want to be as a Christian, it would be pretty neat to, be mentioned as a righteous person, and then also have your great-grandson mentioned as a righteous person. You'd be like, hey, we're on a pretty good roll here. And that's what we see in Enoch and Noah. So Enoch was in the seventh generation from Adam and then down to Noah. So let's go to Genesis chapter 5. And we're going to read verses 21 through 23. So at the beginning of the Bible, Genesis chapter 5. All right. Verse 21. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. And after he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. So, you read that and you're like, well, when I read it, I look at it and I'm like, well, that sounds awesome, like bebopping along and then just be like, hey, Jen, watch this, like that would be pretty sweet. No funerals, no nothing, just gone. I think it'd be awesome. But anyway, the Bible doesn't give any explicit information about the culture during Enoch's life. But as we discussed previously, we know that the line of Cain was multiplying and spreading that value system that we talked about, which was obviously antagonistic to the values of God. So you can just imagine, and then you think 3 generations later, and obviously, years, but gets to the point where God's sick and tired of it. But the point is that Enoch walked faithfully with God when there wasn't necessarily, it wasn't that it was just the prevailing thing to do, right? There was evil people in the world. There was definitely temptation and sin. And yet, for 300 years, he walked faithfully with God. And I think that's pretty neat. We see people that, have these ups and downs in their walk with God. And then sometimes, it just fizzles out and goes away. But, for 300 years, he walks faithfully with God. And it's just interesting to try to quantify what that looked like on a day-to-day basis for 300 years. I'm going to read you a quote. The problem of leading a Christian life in a non-Christian society is now very present to us. And as for the Christian who is not conscious of his dilemma, and he is in the majority, he is becoming more and more de-Christianized by all sorts of unconscious pressure. Paganism holds all the most valuable advertising space. Does anybody recognize that quote? If you do, you can raise your hand. Okay. Does that kind of sound like it could apply in today's world? Like, well, we recognize that place, don't we? Right? Well, that was written in 1939 by T.S. Eliot in a work called The Idea of a Christian Society. And so T.S. Eliot was born in 1888 and lived to 1965. Can you imagine the changes that guy saw? It would be pretty wild. But so in 1939, he wrote that quote in that literary work. And the thing that I think is crazy is that statement is 100% relevant today, but I bet it would be how Enoch also felt if it was written way back then. And so I read that quote to show you that being a Christian doesn't have to be the majority to be right. Being a Christian doesn't have to be the religion of the state to be correct. The likelihood is that there will be opposition to walking with God during your life, but that's the challenge. That's what we have to overcome. And I think, Enoch experienced that. We see that T.S. Eliot struggled with that concept. And today, we also see that is also the case. Enoch walked faithfully with God, and without faith it is impossible to please God. In my previous message, we addressed faith, right, and the definition of faith, and the high bar that it sets when you say that you have faith, especially for things unseen. Remember, we talked about things unseen. I gave you guys a little lesson in how to hunt bears, right? And so we talk about Enoch. He walked faithfully with God, and without faith, it's impossible for us to please God. In Noah, I think that we have an awesome example to see how faith should spur us into action. And I'm not talking about just, going hard at life and then fitting God in where you can. I'm talking about, spending the time to know what God wants for you, to understand His desires, and then for you to actually go out and do those things. And the question is, why is that important? We're talking about a legacy of faith, and so why is this important? January 6, 2019, Pastor Nace preached on Hebrews 11, verse 7. I listened to that sermon, and in it he said, I could preach 6 or 7 sermons about this. And I was like, wow, that's a challenge to look into even one verse, a lot more critically than I have the habit of. But he made a couple of points that I want to highlight, and he was discussing how children, by and large, turn out like their parents. And he said, there is exceptions. He used the example, sometimes people that own ranches, their kid become a doctor. And then he said, his dad wasn't a pastor. He said, but my dad worked construction, and he worked construction for 20 years. And I think all of us who have children acknowledge that our kids take an interest in what we do, and as they get older, it might grow stronger, it might wane. But as they're growing up, our children are watching us, and they're taking inventory of our behavior and seeing what we do. And so he went on to say, our children model our behavior, and our actions are way more influential than our words. And so it's, as I listened to him, I was like, that's a lot to ponder when we talk about a godly legacy. I can get up here and I can share some thoughts with you out of the Bible, and my kids can be sitting there listening. But the downside is they also get to see me the other 6.5 days of the week, where you guys don't, So like I can get my sweet shoes on and my cool glasses, and I can prepare all week, and I can present to you this picture, right? And you can take it or leave it. as you will. But really, my behavior outside of that doesn't necessarily influence whether you think what I said is true or not. But with your children, it does. If you say one thing on Sunday and then all during the week, there's no indication that you think that's true at all, that will be a more powerful influence on their life and their decision making than other things that you say. Let's go to Genesis chapter 6, verses 9 through 22. I know it's quite a bit, but we're just going to read through it. And it says, Noah and the flood. Genesis chapter 6, verse 9, it says, this is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. We see a pattern here. Enoch walked faithfully with God. Noah walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all the people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I'm surely going to destroy them in the earth, so make yourself an ark of cypress wood, and make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build the ark. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof and an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door on the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I'm going to bring flood waters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has the breath of life in it, everything on earth will perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons, and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, and to keep them alive with you, 2 of every kind of bird and every kind of animal and every creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten, store it away as food for you and for them. Verse 22, Noah did everything just as God commanded. So God approaches Noah with this task. And I was doing some reading on that task and how long would it take, and different scholars have looked at the math. And so let's just put it at a 50 to 75 year project. That's a couple pretty healthy careers, right? And like I've said before, I'm a deputy. I got a buddy that runs a ranch. I got another buddy that's in construction, and we all talk about how sick we are of our jobs and maybe we should do something else. And we were joking we should all just trade, just turn the dial one night, and then we could all try something new. But no one would want to live in something I build. I can tell you that right now. But so 50 to 75 year project, pretty big undertaking. And Noah agrees to it. And so this is where I think it gets interesting, right? What's Noah's attitude during all this time? I know that there's days when I get projects done around the house, and it's zero fun to be around. I remember, so sometimes animals will get out, and I'm in a hurry or whatever, and one time the horses were running down the road, and Jen's like, well, do you want help? And I was like, well, if you want to come out there and get yelled at, then come on, So, because that's what I do when things aren't going my way. I yell at everything. And so, at first it started fights, and now it's just kind of a joke between us. But, attitude, how you go about doing things, it actually has. So, I'll give you a perfect example. I hate working on cars. Whenever I have to work on something, I'm in a bad mood, throwing tools, just whatever. But then there's people, as a hobby, if you can believe it, will get an old junky car, right? And they want to tinker on it. And then so, my kids, when something breaks, all my kids are like, oh, look out, Dad's about to get mad, right? And but then other people are like, oh, working on cars is fun. Working on cars is fun is a foreign concept in the Reed household. There's nothing fun about it. It's only a reason to get mad, right? And so, like what was Noah doing while his sons were watching him build this boat? Getting made fun of? I bet he was, right? But was he mad every day? Could you imagine him just throwing boards around and, and the kids are like, what are you doing? I'm being obedient to God. That's what I'm doing. Can you picture this? It would be so. Could you imagine 50 years of dad just being mad about what he's doing? It's kind of interesting, And then I thought, was it poor workmanship? I've built lots of fences and, and chicken coops and whatever. And you get to a point where it's like, I remember one time I built this chicken coop and I pulled the wire straight and the post against the chicken coop went like this. You know what I did? I looked at it and I said, that's good enough. It's good enough. Whatever. And so could you imagine Noah building this ark and there's a big gap in the first 3 boards down the bottom and he's like, it's good enough. I don't see any rain coming. It's good enough. Whatever, So there's all this stuff that could going on. Was it a burden? Did he get up every morning and the kids are like, oh, how's your day? Oh, fine. I'm going to build the ark again. Everything's awesome, kids. And God loves you. Bye. How did he act? It's interesting. Going back to Pastor Nace's sermon, he points out that Noah's whole family gets on the ark. That Noah's righteous life had a material influence on his children. That's pretty awesome. At the end of this huge endeavor, they actually wanted to be around him, Like he conducted himself in a way that when he's like, all right, everybody load up, and now I'm going to close the door and we're going to be stuck in here. They were like, okay, we're in, right? I can just imagine, some people after watching, their dad or mom or whoever be like, you know what? You just enjoy it by yourself. You just have at it. Just like I talked about, going on vacations, you yell at people to get ready and then you get in the car and you demand that they have fun. That's how you do it, So, but I think it's neat to look and to see that Noah had a family heritage of godliness and that he continued it into his descendants, right? He continued that legacy in his children because they got on the boat. If we're looking for value in this life, I would submit to you that a godly family legacy is it. I think that people that look back on their lives, and it's interesting, I saw a thing that it said that wealth is generally lost by the 3rd generation in American families. It's interesting, isn't it? So you can have a guy that's wildly successful, makes all this money, goes at it, but that legacy is generally in the hands of somebody not in that family within 3 generations. And you ask yourself, why? Well, I would say because the priority is wrong. God blesses us with what he blesses us, and we need to be happy with that. But it's about the priorities, If the priorities are incorrect, we can't expect God's blessing through the generations. And Nace also brought that up. He talked about where it says, God curses the disobedient through generations. And he was making the point that a lot of that is the consequence of ungodly behavior that ripples down through the generations. But we have the opportunity to change that. But there is that effect of the consequence of sin through generations. 3 John starts out, the elder, to my dear friend Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well. It gave me great joy when Some believers came to testify about your faithfulness to the truth, telling how you continue to walk in it. Verse 4, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. I just love that verse. 3 John verse 4. Whether you're wealthy and have lots, or whether you're poor and don't have much, I guarantee at the end of your life, to watch your descendants serving God will bring you joy. And so when we talk about this legacy of faith, right? Because faith is important, because without faith it's impossible to please God. That's what we read in the Bible. So how do we cultivate this desire in our family to follow God, to faithfully follow God? And I would say, first and foremost, that we pray that the Holy Spirit works and wills in their lives to guide them in righteousness. Prayer is powerful and effective. And we need to capitalize on that, especially when it comes to our children, our grandchildren. As for our influence, how do we maximize our positive influence? Well, I want to read you Psalm 78, verses 4 through 7. And this is kind of interesting. Psalm 78, verses 4 through 7. We will not hide them from their descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power and wonders he has done. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach their children, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children. Then they would put their trust in God and would not forget his deeds, but would keep his commands. It's important for us to start out by making sure that we know what the truth is and to properly order our lives to reflect that. And although in Psalms it refers to the law, which is how the people of that time knew God, we know that Jesus is the fulfillment of the law, and so that we need to be diligent in teaching our children about Jesus. I wanted to like kind of quantify just partially what this looks like. And so I picked out 3 words that I want to share with you and see how I think Enoch and Noah possess these qualities, and I think they're things to strive for, to have, and to demonstrate in our lives. So there's sincerity, and it says the quality of being free from pretense, deceit, or hypocrisy. Let's go to 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 12. So 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 12. It says, now this is our boast, our conscience testifies that we have conducted ourselves in the world, and especially in our relations with you, with integrity and godly sincerity. We have done so, relying not on worldly wisdom, but on God's grace. I think we can all think of somebody that we would have been annoyed with them, except for the sincerity of whatever they were doing. Like they firmly believed in whatever they were doing, so we were like, well, all right, that's kind of annoying, but I get it. They're fully behind it. And I think when our kids look at us, if they see that we are honestly trying to live out what we say we believe, we're going to make mistakes. There's sin that is going to creep into our life. We can't help that. But if we're free from pretense, deceit, and hypocrisy, I think that we will have much more of an influence on our children and other people than if they see that in us. And so we encourage them to rely on God's grace, not on worldly wisdom. Remember, I might have been in Sunday school. I was like, when was the last time we took a senior in high school and asked them about the quality of church in the town that they were planning to attend college? Have we ever said to them, hey, when you graduate high school, did you make sure that there is a good Bible teaching college in the town that you're going to attend school at? I mean, a Bible teaching church that you're going to attend college at. And, but instead we're like, where are you going to go to college? What are you going to do? How are you going to make a living? We say God's the most important, but our words betray that maybe that's not necessarily exactly how we believe. So 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 12, rely on God's grace. We rely on God in all matters of our life. And it's easy to say, but it's a daunting task. Do we tithe when money's in short supply? Do we demonstrate reliance on God in major decisions? Do we tell our kids, hey, we're at a crossroads here, family decisions. We're going to pray and see what counsel God has for us. These are things that are easy to say and tougher to put into practice. Passion, fervor, ardor, I don't even know what that means, enthusiasm, zeal, and intense emotion, compelling action. Let's go to Romans chapter 12. We're going to read verses 9 through 12. It says, love in action. Love must be sincere. We talked about sincerity. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. I really like this Romans verse. It's what it's talking about. Have passion in pursuing your faith. And then it gives you these things. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. It's even in the small things. I used to just be in such a bad mood to clean the gutters, like the leaves fall in there and then water's going everywhere, and digging that sludge out and throwing it everywhere and cleaning the gutters, right? And now, I look at where we're at in society and the cost of housing, the opportunities that are out there, and even in these small things, it's just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not a blessing. And that's in so many things. I remember when I first started being a youth pastor, and I probably shared this with you, Jen and I were just fighting like crazy. So I go in, Pastor Jason was here. I was like, I quit. And he's like, well, can I ask you why? And I was like, well, it's none of your business. But ever since I started this dumb idea, all we've been doing is fighting. And he kind of laughed. And he's like, well, do you think it's easy? Do you think that the devil wants it to be easy when you're trying to do God's work? And that really made an impression on my mind is that, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. These hard things we can endure. They are for our good. They're no fun. I hate them. I still hate them. I still get mad. That's not like I don't get mad. But I try, and afterwards I'll even sometimes when we're butchering, things get stressful. You're dealing with animals and this and that, and I'm yelling. And afterwards, I tell the boys, I was like, I appreciate your help. I value it a lot. And I said, I'm not yelling at you. I'm just yelling because I'm all excited. And they're like, oh, yeah, we get it, Dad, And so now it's our joke, like on the weekends when they have to help me. I was like, go get in the truck. It's time to get yelled at, and they grab their knives and away we go. But, that honesty, that sincerity of being open and honest, I think helps with the relationship. Once again, like I said, it's easy to rattle these things off, but we need to demonstrate that we rely on God and not our own strength in our everyday lives. That's an important thing to show, that it's not us getting it done, right? It's the strength of God through us that allows us to do things. Enthusiasm, intense and eager enjoyment. And so even though this was a synonym listed for passion, I want you to look at it as something with just a little more intensity. And I'll explain that here shortly. I'll hurry up. This sermon, the point is to highlight a godly legacy, right? We talk about Enoch and Noah, that they're in the same family, and that they walked faithfully with God, that they pleased God, and one didn't experience death, and one, was spared from death when pretty much all the rest of the world was killed. And so, how does this happen? And it doesn't happen just overnight, right? I think about David and how he was a shepherd, right? And herding sheep around, boring, right? Boring. The sweetest thing that ever happened in David's life is when the lion or the bear tried to kill a sheep. He was like, yes, finally I'm a hero, and he went and killed it, and he was all in. He had this passion, this enthusiasm for the work, and then he could just hardly believe his good fortune, the blessing that God gave him when he went to give bread to his brothers, and there was this giant that needed killing. He was like, I've been training for this my whole life. I got it. Let's do it. And everybody's like, oh, he is crazy. He's going to die. He goes out and he kills him. And then he goes on and has this illustrious military career, and he has people following him because he just doesn't care. Saul's like, you want to marry my daughter? Go kill 100 men. He's like, let's go kill 200. Right? Now, and the fact that he's killing aside, but it's the enthusiasm that was contagious. But it started in his childhood when he was out there. And hey, I've said this before, you ever been in sheep country? What's on the top of every hill? A pile of rocks, because that's the most exciting thing to do in the day is pile rocks. That's what you do for entertainment when you're herding sheep, unless you have the good fortune of having a coyote or a lion or a bear try to kill one, and then you're like, woohoo, something awesome, and you're back stacking rocks. And so David was training from his childhood. So when we talk about our kids, so we talked about bear hunting. I gave you a good lesson on bear hunting. Now I'm going to talk about deer hunting with your daughter. Now this is a whole new level of hunting, okay? When you hunt with boys, when you take your boys out, every creature, great and small, is in mortal danger of losing its life. Because they have a gun and they have a license to kill, and they want to. They want to kill things. But when you take girls, so my buddy Caleb and I, we grew up together. He has a daughter, same age as my daughter. And so we're like, we need to do something meaningful with our daughters, right? So we're going to take them hunting. And we realized right off the bat that we were kind of out of our league, because in the back seat, they had sewing equipment, right? They're sewing. They were giggling nonstop. And when they had some downtime, they took rocks and were making pictures in the gravel with bigger rocks. Like they made this little bear picture. And we're like, man alive. But we took them. So the first year, Hadassah went hunting. She went out there, and in the morning, it spent about 20 minutes, she shot 2 deer. Bam, bam. She filled both her tags, packed them out, threw them in the truck, and she just thought it was really super easy. So the second year, Caleb and I, Vesper and Hadassah, we go out hunting again. And the first day we're a little bit lackadaisical because it was so easy. Last year, the year before, Vesper shot 2 deer too. So we were there 2 days, shot 4 deer, in the truck, out, we're gone, right? Hunting's easy. That's what Vesper and Hadassah took away. Hunting's easy. So the next year we go out there having a little bit tougher time, and we had an opportunity to hunt more, but Hadassah's like, well, I want to go back to camp and hang out with Hadassah. And I was like, I didn't drive 400 miles so you could just go hang out. We're here to hunt. But I thought, you know what? This is like father-daughter time. I'm trying to, so whatever she wants to do. So we go and we hang out in camp, and the next morning we're going to go hunt, and it starts to rain. And one thing about eastern Montana, when it rains, you leave. Or you might stay indefinitely. So it started raining, I said, we're leaving. We pack up, and we head out. And Vesper and Hadassah could hardly believe it. They're like, well, we're not going to get any deer? And I was like, well, no, it's raining. We're leaving, and you didn't get anything. And so after that, I told Hadassah, I said, if you want to go hunt, when it's hunting time, you should hunt, not play with your friend. And so this year we're going to go again, but this year we had to add into the mix some boys because Caleb's boy turned 10 so he could hunt. Nehemiah, wasn't going to be denied anymore. He's like, I'm coming on a hunting trip, like I didn't want to find him underneath the truck hanging on 50 miles down the road, so I put him in the truck, right? But Hadassah had a new mindset. This year she's like, because last year she didn't get a deer. We didn't hunt much after that. Missed her chance, that was that. This year she's like, I really want to get a deer. We go out the first day, it's pretty thin. The next day we go out, and I spot these deer, and they feed into this really tall stuff, and they lay down, and they disappear. It's 9:30 in the morning. And we watch 13 mule deer and 3 really nice whitetail bucks go into this stuff and lay down. And I'm like, oh man, kids, all we got to do is hang out till they stand up, and we're going to get a deer. So we sneak around, and we crawl up, and we find the spot, and we lay down. And we lay there for 5 hours. And I almost have a mutiny on my hands. They're like, there's not even any deer in there. But it was so awesome because, right, we're talking about something bigger than just hunting, right? Like, I want them to trust me, trust my judgment. And every once in a while, one of those big whitetails would stand up, stretch, move around. They'd see it, and they'd be like, oh, man, we get ready and lay down. And we'd be like, waiting. So finally, it's almost dark, and Hadassah's like, Dad, I don't know how much longer I can sit here. She's like, I just want to shoot a deer. And I said, okay, the first buck, right? And I mean, there was a huge whitetail in there. And as a dad, I'm like, how sweet, like how much bragging rights would I have if my daughter shot this huge whitetail, right? And I'm like, just hang in there, Hadassah. We're going to kill this deer. And she's like, and this is girl hunting for you. Like if it was a boy, I'd have them all in, right? He wants to have it. She's like, I don't care the size of it. I just want to shoot a deer. So this mule deer stands up, little forky horn, nice, respectable buck. Bam, boom, down it goes. And that 5 hours, it was hard, right? And if I wasn't there, there's no way Hadassah and Nehemiah would have stayed there for 5 hours. I almost had a mutiny, but then they found a breakfast burrito in the side of my pack, and that held out for another 2 hours. But without my constant encouragement, my discipline, right? They start to rat around. I'm like, you sit still. We're having fun. Remember, that's how I have fun. I tell people, when I tell you you're having fun, you're having fun. That's how it works. And so I had to tell them about every 5 minutes that they're having fun. But you know what? When she got to shoot that deer and hold the antlers and feel the hair and have that successful feeling, she was having fun. And that's what we have to realize about our children, is that we've been places that they haven't been. We've experienced things that they can't know. And without us to guide them, they won't get there. And that's the same way with us. If we don't have a relationship with our Heavenly Father, He knows everything. There's nothing that He doesn't know. He's perfect, right? Earthly fathers make mistakes. I was so thankful she got a deer. Could you imagine how horrible it would have been if I would have made them late? Like, we started out with T-shirts on, and by the time it was done, they had every stitch of clothing they had on. The wind was howling like you couldn't believe, and they were cold. But I was like, this is worth it. And that's the same way in our spiritual life. If we can demonstrate to our kids that we're willing to sit in the hardship of Christianity with them, if we're willing to have the same experiences right alongside them, not you go out and try this and I'm going to be back here where it's comfortable. We're out here with them where it's uncomfortable. But in the end, eternal life, Jesus died on the cross for our sins so that everyone who believes in Him shall have eternal life. That's totally worth it. Amen. And we need to live our life like that. And so, like I said, it's kind of an inadequate analogy, but in that hunting trip, I saw that. Like, our children, if we have the correct relationship, will follow. But it requires sincerity and passion and enthusiasm. If I wasn't a half-crazy hunter, like when we got back, I was talking with Caleb and Matthew, and I was like, yeah, we laid in the bushes for 5 hours. And they're like, that sounds horrible, And I was like, it was awesome, right? But that's what we need to bring into our Christian walk for our friends and our family. It's awesome. There's nothing I would rather be doing than interacting with God and following Him wherever it may lead. Poor as a church mouse, rich, whatever. So, anyway, Enoch and Noah. Sincerity, passion, and enthusiasm. And if we apply those things in our Christian walk, I think you will see amazing impacts in your family. Do we have one more song? Mm-hmm. All right, and then I'll have a closing verse, okay? Oh, he did mute me. I turn it off because I'm scared he might not when I'm singing. So, 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. That's my encouragement to you. In the power of God, love, and live a self-disciplined life. Thank you.